Hi guys, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my channel, and in this video I am going to be telling you guys about the night caller. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Eric Edgar Cooke was born on February 25th, 1931 in Victoria Park, which is a suburb of Perth, Western Australia. He was the oldest of 3 children. His parents were Vivian Thomas Cooke and Christine Edgar. He attended 5 different schools, including Perth Junior Technical and Forest High. By the age of 14 years old, he had quite a few skills. His parents only married because Christine was pregnant with him, and his father was an alcoholic who frequently beat him and Christine. If Eric tried protecting her, it just got worse. Christine would actually sleep in the staff room at her job in the Como Hotel just to avoid going home. Eric was born with a cleft lip and palate, and he had one surgery at 3 months old and another surgery at 3.5 years old. However, the operations were not 100% successful, so he was left with some facial deformities and a speech impairment. As you can probably imagine, this made him a big target of bullying at school. To Eric, these abnormalities also seemed to play a part in how his father treated him. Although his 2 younger sisters were also experiencing his rage, Eric just seemed to get it worse. He was even hospitalized on numerous occasions for injuries, including possible brain damage, and different resources said different things. Some people were saying that's how bad his father was beating him at home. Others say that Eric did this to himself because he was suicidal. Either way, it kind of had to do with how his father was treating him regardless. These beatings started with his fists, and then they would gradually move to his belts and sticks. Eric was expelled from Subiaco State School after being caught stealing money from a teacher's purse at only 6 years old. He was then transferred to Newcastle Street Infant School. Just like his last school, he was bullied, and this seemed to be a common theme throughout all the schools that he attended in his lifetime. There were times where Eric would hide under houses or roam neighboring streets just to avoid getting beat by his father. He also supposedly had reoccurring headaches, but I guess after a surgery in 1949, they magically stopped. At 14 years old, Eric ultimately dropped out of school to do work instead. Now, these next few facts are kind of iffy. I'm not 100% sure if they're accurate, but every resource I was using kind of said different things for what he did for work. He apparently joined a surf life-saving club, and he was desperate to fit in. He stole a watch and had it engraved to say, "To Cookie from the boys at the SJSLC." And he wanted it to just look like an award that he received. Once he got caught, they got even more suspicious because supposedly there were things going missing from other people's lockers. So now they were suspicious that Cooke had something to do with that. He was then rejected from the club, and they used the excuse that he had too many blackouts. He also worked as a delivery boy for Central Provision Stores in order to help support his family, but this did not satisfy him how he had hoped. Eric wanted to be rich. He took to petty crimes such as stealing, vandalism, and arson. At the age of 17, he was breaking into flats and setting them on fire. He wanted to make it look like a break-in, so he smashed a window, and this specific flat was actually not technically broken into because the owner did give him a key so he could look after the place. However, when they caught him, they were very sympathetic towards him because of his past. At 18 years old, he served 18 months in jail for burning down a church because they rejected his choir audition. As you can imagine, he was closely kept an eye on during his parole. The psychiatrist actually described him as a liar beyond help. He finally got some acceptance and a social life when a minister offered to rehabilitate him. This was mainly playing hockey, and he also started going to some Bible classes, but he would steal from his friends there as well, and once again, he was seen as beyond help. Cooke also began damaging clothing and furniture in acts of vengeance. He'd even cut out newspaper articles talking about his crimes in order to gain acquaintances and friends. On March 12, 1949, the police finally caught him and found evidence at his grandmother's house where he was staying. On May 24th, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was convicted on 2 charges of stealing, 7 of breaking and entering, and 4 of arson. At 21 years old, he joined the Australian Army. He served in the citizen military forces and then eventually went to the permanent military forces on May 27, 1952. However, he was discharged on August 28th once they discovered his juvenile record. On October 14, 1953, he married a 19-year-old waitress by the name of Sarah Levin at a Methodist church, and she went by Sally. They eventually ended up with 7 kids, 4 boys and 3 girls. After their first child, Sally realized that Eric was not the man who she thought he was. Friends and family kept trying to convince her to leave him, but she was loyal. She even stayed with him after he spent 2 years in prison for stealing and crashing a car while following a girlfriend only 2 months after Tony's birth. And I could not find anything on this girlfriend. I don't know if it was somebody he was having an affair with or just somebody that was a woman who he knew. Not really sure on the details for that. Eric was described as a short, slight man with dark, wavy hair and a twisted mouth. Now, unlike most serial killers, Eric did not have a specific MO. Everything that he did to his victims was completely sporadic and never really matched each other. So multiple people were shot when they came home to Eric robbing them. On January 27, 1963, a series of shootings occurred with a rifle. 2 people were shot while sleeping, although their houses were not messed with. One was an accountant who had a single bullet to the head, and the other was an 18-year-old student named John Sturkey. Others include a couple being injured in a parked car, and a retired grocer being killed when he answered the doorbell. Eric had no empathy whatsoever. After stabbing somebody, he got some lemonade from their fridge and sat on their back porch just drinking it, not a care in the world. Another victim was strangled with the cord of her own bedside lamp. Her body was raped and dragged into the neighbor's yard, and he also used a whiskey bottle to sexually penetrate her body. He then left the whiskey bottle cradled in her arms. In the 1960s, it was common for Australians to leave their cars unlocked overnight, and some even with the keys still in the ignition. So Eric took advantage of this and he stole a car almost every single night. He would commit a hit and run and then return the car, sometimes without the owners ever knowing. In the year of 1958, a woman by the name of Nell Schneider was riding her bike when Eric drove straight into her. She rolled over the car and her bike got stuck in the grill of the car. The bike eventually became free once he turned a corner. She was left lying in a pool of her own blood, but fortunately she did survive. He ended up running down 7 women. He spent 2 years doing hard labor for committing peeping Tom and other minor offenses. He also began minimizing evidence by wearing women's gloves. He kept these gloves hidden above his toilet at home, and he also wore a hat that he would pull over his face so nobody could see these abnormalities and obviously couldn't identify him. In August of 1963, an 18-year-old female student was shot once in the head and killed while she was babysitting. Police fingerprinted over 30,000 males over the age of 12. They also test fired over 60,000 .22-inch rifles. Also in August of 1963, a rifle was hidden in a bush in Rockwood Avenue, Mount Pleasant. A ballistics test proved that the rifle was in fact used in one of the murders. So police decided to set a little trap. They put a similar rifle where the other one was, and they camped out for 17 days. Finally, Eric came back for it and got caught. He initially denied having anything to do with the murder that they have evidence for, but he eventually confessed when one of the detectives named Max Baker finally had enough. "You're gonna hang, you know. There's no doubt about it. You got a wife and kids. think of them, and then think about whether you're gonna be dragged to the gallows like a mongrel dog or you're gonna go there like a man. He eventually confessed to more crimes, which included 8 murders and 14 attempted murders. He remembered every detail with every crime. Like, his memory about them was crazy. He also admitted to 250 burglaries. He was able to recall exactly what he took from each house and what each house looked like on the inside. He knew the number of coins he stole, he knew the paintings and the flowers. He also always left a small amount of money behind, hoping that they wouldn't realize they were missing any in the first place. Now, there were 2 wrongful convictions during this whole fiasco. Daryl Beamish for the murder of Julian Brewer, and John Button for the manslaughter of Rosemary Anderson. They were both already imprisoned, and then Eric confessed. In the year of 2002, Button's appeal was successful and he was finally freed. In 2005, Beamish's conviction was also overturned and he was let go as well. The state also acknowledged that Eric was responsible for the murder of South Perth's beautician on January 30th, 1959. On February 16th, 1963, there was also a female social worker that was strangled, and Eric was most likely responsible for that as well. On November 25th, 1963, Eric stood trial for the murder of John Sturkey. He pled not guilty by reason of insanity. However, it was determined by professionals that he was sane at the time of the murders, and he did not suffer from schizophrenia like the defense tried to claim. The jury consisted of 8 men and 4 women, and it took them 1 hour and 5 minutes to reach a verdict. On November 27th, 1963, Eric was sentenced to death by hanging. He actually could have submitted an appeal, but he told his lawyers not to because he deserved what was coming to him. While on death row, he expressed his concern because of the fact that at that time, 2 other men were also being convicted of murders that he committed. He actually went on a hunger strike because of it. His father would also visit, and supposedly Eric would bang his head repeatedly against the wall after he left. 10 minutes before his execution, he swore on a Bible that he was the murderer of Julian and Rosemary. On October 26, 1964, he was executed at Fremantle Prison. He was the last man to be hanged there. He was buried in an unmarked grave at the Fremantle Cemetery. In 2011, Beamish was granted 425,000 Australian dollars by the government for being wrongfully convicted. The city of Perth began locking their cars, their houses, and getting dogs for security because this town will never be the same. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. I don't really care. Subscribe if you're new. Comment down below videos you would like to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!